Welcome to A Productive Conversation. I'm Mike Vardy, and I'm back with another Flashback Friday episode, this one harkening back to 2018. And this is Dan Schawbel. I'm excited to bring him back in this conversation back. Dan's got a lot going on right now since we last had this conversation, but we touched on a bunch of things in our last conversation. The book that we really focused on was Back to Human, How Great Leaders Create Connection in the Age of Isolation. And we really do have a bit of a history because when I was a managing editor of Lifehack, we had some back and forth, but we never spoke before, at least not before this episode. And so the ability to kind of jump into a lively conversation about using technology as kind of a bridge to more human conversations, rather than making it a barrier, and how technology can also help deepen relationships, and the importance of getting out to events and gatherings to push your comfort zones. Those are all the things that we touched on. But what has Dan been doing since this conversation? I'll just provide a brief update before we get into this episode. So since Dan last appeared on the podcast in 2018, he's been actively shaping conversations around workplace trends and personal development. He's the managing partner at Workplace Intelligence, where he's led over 70 research studies with major brands like Amazon and Deloitte. And his podcast, 5 Questions with Dan Schawbel, which we do touch on during the conversation as well, it continues to feature top industry leaders, and his LinkedIn learning courses have reached over 220,000 students. Of course, I'll link to his LinkedIn learning courses in the show notes, as well as my own, because I have some LinkedIn learning courses there as well. Dan remains a sought-after speaker, and he contributes insights to Forbes Business Insider and at major conferences. So you can follow his latest work at danschawbel.com. Again, all of this will be in the show notes, which you can definitely access wherever you're getting this podcast right now. And now, without further ado, let's just get to our conversation, one that took place nearly 7 years ago as of this recording. So here it is, a productive conversation with Dan Schawbel. Enjoy. Dan, thanks for joining me.
So happy to be here with you, Mike.
It's been a while since we've connected, and we've never actually talked, I don't think, have we? I don't think we've talked. I think we've communicated via email and stuff back when I was back in as we were talking about the life hack days, but I don't think we've ever actually spoken to one another.
We've never spoken up until now, but technology has led us to this call.
Which is great, but I want to talk about a book that you've got, Back to Human, How Great Leaders Create Connection in the Age of Isolation, because I'm in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. You are in New York City, right?
Lower East Side of Manhattan. That's where I am.
So we are able to talk literally from opposite ends of the continent. And we are currently not isolated. But what one of the things that my wife and I were looking at the book that, we got an advanced copy of it. And one of the things she said to me, she says, she kind of skims through the books initially to kind of go, okay, so that way she knows kind of what we're going to be talking about, because she kind of handles all the back end stuff. And she said, you're going to like this book because basically, she goes, the idea of the human component, bringing things back to human, and using technology as a leveraging tool, as opposed to to create face-to-face connections. She goes, that's right up your alley. And I don't want to kind of say that that's what the entire book's about, but that's one of the messages inside the book, right?
The big message is use technology as a bridge to more human interaction instead of a barrier. Let it remove the tasks that you don't even want to do, and let it enable you to meet people on the phone or in person, so you can establish better, stronger, more human, genuine relationships, because we have an inherent need to have friendships and feel love, feel like we belong. And technology gives us the illusion that we have great connections, that we're highly productive. But many a times technology can be distracting and make us less productive. Technology, especially Facebook, makes us believe we have thousands of friends, yet we can only rely on about 4 at a time in an emotional crisis for every 150 Facebook friends that we have. And so I think that we have to think more about how to use technology the right way, because when I interviewed 100 top young leaders at 100 of the best companies in the world, they said that technology is a double-edged sword.
Right.
Regardless if you think it's good or bad, it's how, when, and where you use it that's most important. And I'll give you the most simplest example, right? So if you have a coworker that's running late to a meeting, you can text them saying, make sure that you come to conference room A. But if you get into a fight with a coworker, do not handle that via text. So what we did for the book, I worked with Virgin Pulse. We interviewed over 2,000 managers and employees in 10 countries. And we found that the biggest thing that gets in the way of human interaction is email. Yet a study in the Harvard Business Review found that one face-to-face interaction is more successful than 34 emails exchanged back and forth. So technology has led us to believe that we're being more productive, yet it's great misunderstanding that has resulted in a time suck, not a time gain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think something that's very relevant to your show that I was telling you about earlier was we asked all of them, what benefits would you receive from more face-to-face time with your coworkers? And a third said they'd be more productive, and a half said they would have deeper relationships with their team. So people are bringing their full selves into the workplace, whether we like it or not. And, you don't want to be, Mike, the professional at work, and then Mike, the family man. You just want to be Mike. Right? That's who you are. You do some things that are professional, personal. Your work day and your personal life are very intertwined because of technology right now. People are, working crazy hours, not having your phone as the new vacation. We're constantly doing work. So if we don't like the work we're doing and don't extract meaning from it, and if we don't get along with our coworkers, we're not going to stay at that company very long and be engaged.
I want to talk a little bit about this idea of deepening connection and deepening relationships because, there's a book called The Shallows. I can't remember who wrote it offhand right now, but I'm going to link it in the show notes. The idea of how our brains are becoming shallower because technology allows us to access things so quickly. You talk about email, right? Like the idea of just quickly, looking at email, getting like a cursory glance at it and deciding, okay, I can deal with this now, deal with this later, moving on. It's almost like we're processing instead of interacting or engaging. How do you, and in your research, how did people find that they were able to leverage technology? Well, give me maybe a couple of quick examples, so that the deepening of connection could happen in maybe a way that didn't have a ton of boundaries to make or barriers to make that happen.
Yeah, in its simplest form, what technology can let you do, especially through social media, is learn more about people's personal interests so that you can connect with them on a deeper level. Like if you both like the same sports team, you might not know that, but maybe they posted about it on, Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn. And because they posted that, now you know something about them that they might not have shared in the workplace. And you can bring that up and form a stronger bond based on what they're doing outside the workplace or just a hobby in general. I think the thing that's really interesting is that only 20% of companies have offsites, team building activities, and social events for their workforce. Yet that's the number one way to create a more human social work environment where people feel highly engaged and connected to the organization's mission and vision and values. And so what we found is, yes, by encouraging people to be more social, by having a leader that you can trust, by being in an environment where you feel like you belong, by being happy at work, which is important, right, for our health and well-being, and then by having a true purpose and having purpose through your work, knowing that you're part of something bigger than you. When all of those employee engagement factors add up, you're going to stay with the company longer, be more productive, be happier, and it's going to improve your whole life. See, the reason why I focus on helping organizations create healthy work environments is because if you have a good work experience, if you're happy and fulfilled in the workplace, it's going to improve your entire life because you're spending a third of your whole life working.
Right. Now, I want to talk a little bit about conferences and events and things like that, like things that I want to definitely dive into, like being in an organizational setting. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I just came back from a conference not too long ago. I make an effort to go to conferences, not just to speak at them, but to attend as well, because often that the magic happens kind of between sessions. The magic's in the middle, right? Where you can go watch a session and learn a lot, but then the networking and all that stuff happens within the hallways of the event. How important has it been for you? And then we can talk about the people that you research, because we talked before we jumped on about people that you've met, people that you know. We have a lot of common colleagues and such. How important is it to get out there for people to go to events that either maybe push them outside their comfort zone a bit in terms of learning something, but also putting themselves in a networking opportunity? And secondly, how does that, how can people take those experiences if they're having them and maybe make them even greater than they already are?
The best way to meet someone new is to go alone. If you go to an event alone, it forces you to talk to other people.
Right.
If you go with a bunch of friends, there's a level of comfort and support that prevents you from taking the initiative to meet other people. So it's really important to go somewhere alone and then be genuine, find the right people. Even before you attend the event that you want to meet, reach out before the event using technology. I do this all the time. I mean, if I'm speaking at a conference with thousands of people, the 2 weeks before, I look at who else is speaking. I reach out to the ones that are the most applicable to me in terms of what they're studying, or maybe if they're prospective clients, and I lock in all the meetings before I'm at the event. So most of the work at the event has already been done. And I've used technology to create more in-person situations where I'm getting to know these people better, because none of these people are going to hire me unless I meet them in person first.
Right.
And so by taking the time to meet them in person, it's easier, because as an introvert, I always struggle with just like walking up to random people. I'm using the technology to alleviate that anxiety by already booking these meetings with people I actually genuinely want to talk to and I think I can support. So the path to networking becomes much easier and more targeted, and the conversion rate on that in terms of a new friend or a new client is much greater as a result.
You obviously also probably leverage technology to create these processes that allow you to do that. So, for example, before every event, you probably have, what do they call it when a car gets a tune-up, like, a 12-point checklist that says, okay, here are the things that I'm going to do before I go to this event. Because often, and this is a human component, is we tend to pack things together. Like, I'm going to an event. I need to introduce myself. And you don't really have a checklist of what you need to do necessarily. You describe some of the things. How important is it to kind of, when you want to kind of engage with people more? And let's talk about this from two vantage points. Either you're going to an event or you're going to a new job environment and you want to make sure that you thrive in that environment. Putting together some kind of using technology to leverage, like hey, here are the steps I need to take. And then also for organizations when they're bringing new people into the fold, or trying to figure out how they want to set up a culture where you can get back to human, or even just not even get back to it, but just establish human right from the get-go. Do you find that you leverage technology in both those events, both those instances? And then maybe how, like what examples would go on those checklists?
So we'll just take a quick step back. Basically,
Sure.
The best way to be productive and happy and fulfilled is it's a proper mix, not balance, but an integration of personal and professional.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also an integration of working by yourself on projects and collaborating with a team on those projects or other projects. So you need both. The problem is in our culture is everything is to the extreme. Everyone has to work from home. Everyone has to work in a corporate office. Everyone has to dress the same. Everything is extremes, right?
Right.
Yet that's not our personalities. We're all, across the spectrum in terms of personality types, in terms of how we operate as humans. And as a result, everyone is different. My checklist is not going to look like your checklist, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I think the core is knowing what you want long term so you can make better short term decisions, knowing what your priorities are and sticking to them, integrating work with life. So if your calendar, if something does not exist in your calendar, it doesn't exist in our heads, right? We live and die by our calendars. So if that's true, we have to inject our calendars with more personal related activities. It could be putting something on your calendar that says, have a 10-minute call with your parents every day, like
Right.
I do, right? It could be adding, coffee with a friend or a corporate sports league, right? But it's consistency. It's every week, making sure that every day you're best integrating personal and professional. So that's at the core of what we need to do instead of trying to balance, because balance means there's trade-offs, and in life is a little bit more complicated than that. And you're not going to look at your watch to make sure that you're done with your personal life and you can start your professional life. It's just, that does not work for anyone. So what you need to do is you need to structure your day so you're maximizing the day and you're able to be fulfilled personally and professionally. And I think what it comes down to is you have to know what you want long term, and that helps you create better short term goals. And then write the goals down. For me, it's 5 personal, 5 professional per year on average. And then once you have those goals written down, make it into a checklist so that, for instance, professionally, I do between 5 and 9 research studies a year. But that's like my core. That's what I really love to do. So it's my highest priority from a professional standpoint. And every time I get a study sponsored, or I field the study, or I come up with a questionnaire, or I do the analysis, or I do a campaign to let people know about the research findings, those are all things that I need to check off as it's happening. So I have to go through a whole process in order to make sure a research study is complete by my standards, as well as the corporation that's sponsoring the research standards. And I do that, 5 to 9 times per year. But personally, it's, I want to travel every year. So I want to make sure that I'm booking a trip to somewhere in the world every December so that the upcoming year, I know I can check that off. Right. So
Right.
it's becoming really smart about how you integrate personal and professional, and then get more specific as you're building out your goals to capture that, to make it more tangible so you can achieve it.
When it comes to, again, putting yourself in the human experience, I find that it's a really important thing, productivity wise, to measure things both qualitatively and quantitatively. So a lot of people will say that, the more boxes they check off, the more fulfilled they are, and technology definitely allows you to do that. Can you share with me, and things like empathy and gratitude, they come to the fore when you're starting to talk about qualitative stuff, right? Because it's more, those are feelings, and those are emotional, and they do have some reason behind them, but they're not so much hey, let me tick off this box on its face. Sure, you might want to say, hey, did I display gratitude today? Yes, I did. Check. And maybe what you did display gratitude about. How do you, when it comes to getting back to human, how do you find that you are able to integrate, and how the people that you talk to integrate those things, like, the virtues of like gratitude and empathy, a balanced, and again, balanced, not the right word, but integrated with those things that are have harder edges, like that are more quantitative?
Yeah, I think it's a very important point. So for me, I don't keep a gratitude journal. I don't do a lot of that. I don't do meditation. I don't do some of that. I do what works for me, that I'm comfortable with, that I know I can do 7 days a week. So that's running every morning. It's cooking 2 to 3 times a day, right? Because the way in which I approach cooking and running is that they're stress relievers, and they're time away from my office, where I can think deeply about the world, my life, what I want to do, and come up with new ideas. But I interviewed many people in the book that have their own formula for health, right? They have their own habits they establish. So I think testing things is really smart, seeing what works for you, because you don't know if you're going to like mindfulness and meditation if you don't try it, right? I've tried it. It doesn't work very well for me. So I think that testing things is important, adopting what's working best for you, and then turning it into a habit, doing it every day at a certain time period, and putting in your calendar so you're ensuring psychologically that you're committed to it. And sometimes, so for some people I interviewed and people I know, sometimes you need an accountability partner.
Right.
So it could cost money. It could be a friend, like hiring a coach, or having a friend who wants to achieve the same objective or create the same habit. And then come up with a system, come up with an agenda of when you're going to meet and conduct that activity.
So when we're trying to put all this stuff together, and we live in this culture of speed and demand, how do you step back to kind of put these practices or these ideas or concepts in place, so that way, moving forward, they become, like you said, they become habitual, they become routine, they become part of the fabric of who you are or what the organization is? Because a lot of people, when I talk to them about adopting new mindsets and new philosophies and new practices, they say, why did I have to spend time doing this? It would have been just fast for me to do it the old fashioned way, or the old way, the way we've always done them, or whatever. So how do you encourage, and maybe what some of the people you talk to, what these leaders, what they did to put these in place, so that they became not automatic, but they became woven within the fabric of either their culture individually or the company culture that they lead?
The best advice I can give, and when I tell my Instagram followers all the time, is small steps before big leaps.
Yeah.
So start small, establish one habit at a time. It's like if you want to change your eating habits, don't just become a vegan tomorrow, right? Like eliminate chicken, right? And try that for a day, a week, a month, 2 months, right? So you have to do things every single day and to change habits long term. And then you could add a new habit into the mix, right? So start with one at a time and then break habits into smaller pieces so they're more manageable. When I talk to people featured in the book, they establish one work friend before establishing 5 work friends, right? So it's focusing on one thing at a time and then expanding as you go. It's much easier to start with one friend or, a great team member before you have to hire the next 50, because you're learning a lot about yourself, your leadership style, how to manage a person. These are all skills. And then once you have to hire, if your department or your organization is growing, if you have to hire another 50, well, people are different, so you might have to manage them each differently and cater to individual needs, but you still have the skill of management and leadership that, you just need to learn how to adapt to other people. And so I think that by establishing these habits now, by creating healthy habits, they're going to stick with you for the rest of your life. And I think that's where the ultra performers really get an edge, right? It's like they can evolve and reinvent themselves and to stay relevant, but they have these core set of skills that allow them to be successful for the rest of their life, not just this year.
So, I mean, the idea of the workplace of the future, and this is something you've spoken to before. Most people tend to think technology is like the future. Like, oh, well, we will all be working remotely and Zoom meetings will happen all the time. And, we'll get together for retreats once a year and that'll be the extent of it. This, like the book and the insights in the book, not just insights, but like research based. And so it's not just like pie in the sky thinking. This is like, okay, I've talked to these people. This is based on my own work, et cetera, et cetera. It seems to be counterintuitive, and this is always an interesting thing when I'm reading a book or talking to someone and they're saying something that, especially when they are someone who works in the workplace, if you're like, well, no, technology will be used as a leveraging tool as opposed to the tool that makes everything happen. People are like, wait a minute, hold on, I thought technology was supposed to make everything better. What do you say to people that are like, well, hold on a second, like in terms of cost benefit, in terms of like, wouldn't it be better for us just to have remote working and people working different cycles? Like I think, for example, one thing would be, and I noticed this when I worked for Costco, and I'm noticing this when I talk to other people, is that people, some company cultures are starting to recognize like, hey, some people work better in the morning and some people work better in the evening. Just that's the way their circadian rhythm works. I mean, Dan Pink talks about this in When, and so did Michael Bruce, who's been on the show before, talks about this in The Power of When. Like, what do you say to people who are like, well, yeah, but what about the dollars? What about the way that we've been told that the future is going to work? This seems to be counterintuitive to that.
It's really not, though. I think the one thing that's predictable is that jobs will be lost and created.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know how many jobs will be lost or created. There's been several predictions that it would be a net neutral, net positive, or net negative impact to the economy and the workforce. So we don't really know. We do know that humans and robots will be working side to side. So we have to figure out how to leverage them for our benefit and our organization's growth and profitability. There's no question on that. But I think that the need to have soft skills and leadership skills and to be able to manage tasks and delegate and communicate and have a positive attitude and connect with other people is only going to become more important as we see more and more technology take hold.
Right.
And I always say, let the technology remove the work you don't want to do. Like chatbots now are sophisticated. They can help you book meetings. So you don't have to go back and forth with someone trying to schedule something.
Mm-hmm.
It just looks at your calendar and the data that you have there, and it does it automatically for you, which saves you time. So you can invest that time in things that have a bigger impact in the organization. So let it remove the tasks that you don't want to do. So you can focus on things that require more emotional intelligence and human connection, like selling or working on solving a problem. So I think that technology can be good. But if we're overusing it, and I love this quote by the education secretary in Singapore: if you work like a robot, you'll be replaced by a robot.
Mm-hmm. No, and you talk about chatbots, and one of the things that came up at a conference I was at earlier this year was the idea that chatbots can kind of pre-qualify people to a point, and then it gets handed over to a human, because there's a certain point where there's a point of friction, right? And to be fair, the point of friction is probably they evolve as well, but there's that subjectivity that you're talking about that technology can't kind of muster and can't deal with. Before we wrap up, can you touch on, and this is mentioned in the book, self-assessments are always great, especially when people are like, where do I start and how do I know what I need to work on, and how do I know where to kind of where the road will take me based on my own traits and my organizational traits. It's called the Work Connectivity Index. Can you share a little bit about that and why you put that together for people?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that I always had the ambition of having is an academic assessment. And it took me, this is the third book I've done since I was 22. And I was like, now is the best time, especially with this topic. So I reached out to 7 professors who study work isolation. And Professor Kevin Rockman from George Mason University got back to me, and he's like, yeah, I'd love to work with you on this. And so what the Work Connectivity Index is, WCI, is it measures the strength of your work relationships. So you get a connectivity score from poor to very high. And if you have a low score, it means you're not connecting enough with the people on your team. So your relationships have suffered. Thus, you're less productive, happy, fulfilled, and you're less committed to the team and organization as a result. So of course, if you work remote, you typically have lower scores. And in the research study with Virgin Pulse, we found that if you work remote, you're much less likely to want a long-term career at your company, which is the biggest finding, in my opinion. I've worked remote for 8 years, and I can connect with that very well, especially as I'm talking about this all around the world. And so I think that knowing and having the self-awareness that you have a low connectivity score can help you, because it's like, oh my God, like I might be isolated. I'm not in touch with my colleagues enough. I need to do something about it. So the first step in solving a problem or creating more human relationships is to realize there's a problem in the first place.
So Dan, I want to kind of give people a bit. I didn't want to put too much of the book into our conversation today, because there's a lot of great stuff in there. And a lot of this, like you said, it's like going to the conference on your own. Like you need to sit with this and do this on your own, especially like you start off with, the book is divided in 3 parts: master self connection, then there's create team connection, and build organizational connection. So this book isn't just for, organizations, and it isn't just for individuals. It works for all levels. And if you're running an organization, you can pass this down to the people that are in your organization. And if you're not, and you want to start an organization, like there's so many facets that this book works in, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've had some interviews so far where they're like, this is just how to live a good life. Mm-hmm. But I didn't write that with that in mind, right? I'm like, I was writing this with like the new leader in mind. Someone who has the ambition to be a leader. What do you have to watch out for and think about so that you're fulfilled and happy, and you create a good workplace culture that people are excited to be a part of. And yet the book also helps employees who want to interface better with their teammates and their leader.
Well, whenever something can scale, it's got legs. And this book definitely has legs, because humans have legs. No, I'm just kidding. The book, But you can pick up this book. It's called Back to Human, How Great Leaders Create Connection in the Age of Isolation. Dan, where can people pick up the book, and where else can they learn more about you and the work you're doing?
You can pick up the book in bookstores and Amazon.com and other online retailers like Barnes & Nobles and Walmart. And you can listen to my podcast, 5 Questions with Dan Schawbel, and get all of my research and articles and content on danschawbel.com.
Thanks for taking the time to listen to this Flashback Friday episode. I'm always happy to bring these episodes out of the vault each and every week. Flashback Friday episodes aren't the only episodes that we publish here on A Productive Conversation. Each week we have a shiny new episode as well. And this includes my PM Talk series with my good friend, Patrick Rohn. That happens every single month, as well as those shiny episodes every week and these Flashback Friday episodes. The best way to make sure you don't miss them is to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, where you're checking this podcast out right now, as an example. Or you can go to mikevardy.com/podcast590, and everything is there for you as well. That is one way to support the show. Another way to support the show is to check out the sponsors you heard intermittently throughout this episode. Just go to mikevardy.com/podcast sponsors. Click on any of those sponsors that have offerings that are interesting to you, and that way they know that we sent you. That's it for this episode. Thanks so much for taking the time to listen. Until next time, I'm Mike Vardy, the host of A Productive Conversation, reminding you to stop doing productive and start being productive. See you later.